I always figured Rachel would leave me for someone with more money. I just never thought she'd be stupid enough to leave the evidence lying around like breadcrumbs for a blind man to follow. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My name is Sam McAllister, and I've been fixing cars for 22 years. I'm good with my hands, better with engines than I ever was with words, and I thought that was enough. Turns out, when your wife starts making six figures designing fancy office buildings, being a decent mechanic doesn't count for much anymore. It was a Tuesday morning in October when everything went to hell. Rachel had left her laptop open on the kitchen counter, something she never did. Usually that thing was locked up tighter than Fort Knox, but there it was, screen glowing, showing an email that made my coffee taste like motor oil. Can't wait for our weekend in Chicago. Tell Sam you're visiting your sister again. Eric, her business partner, the guy who drove a BMW and wore suits that cost more than I made in a month. The guy who'd been coming to our barbecues for 3 years, shaking my hand and calling me buddy, while apparently planning to steal my wife. I sat there staring at that screen, feeling something cold settle in my stomach. 23 years of marriage. 23 years, and she throws it away for a man who probably couldn't change a tire if his life depended on it. My daughter Maddie came downstairs then, all 16 years old and attitude, grabbing an apple from the counter. She looked at me sitting there and frowned. "Dad? You okay? You look like someone died." "Just tired, sweetheart," I managed. "Your mom already leave for work?" "Yeah, like an hour ago. Said she had some big meeting with Eric about the Morrison project." Maddie paused, studying my face. "Seriously, Dad, what's wrong?" I closed the laptop carefully. Nothing's wrong. Just thinking about work stuff. But everything was wrong. And as I drove to my shop that morning, passing the fancy architectural firm where my wife worked, I started thinking about what I was going to do about it. My auto shop sits on the edge of downtown, squeezed between a pawn shop and a place that sells discount mattresses. It's not much to look at, but it's mine. Built it from nothing after I got out of the Army, one satisfied customer at a time. The sign out front says, "Max Motors, honest work, fair prices." I used to be proud of that sign. Dwayne was already there when I pulled up, coffee in one hand, wrench in the other. He'd been my best friend since high school, worked for the police department for 15 years before his back gave out, and he came to work for me. He took one look at my face and set down his coffee. "What happened?" "Rachel's cheating on me." He didn't act surprised, which should have told me something. Instead, he just nodded slowly and said, "With who?" "Eric, her business partner, the BMW guy." "That pretentious asshole?" Dwayne shook his head. "Man, I never liked him. Always looked at your shop like it was beneath him." "Yeah, well, apparently I'm beneath him too." We worked in silence for a while, but I could feel Dwayne watching me. Finally, he spoke up. "You gonna confront her?" "I don't know yet. Need to think." "What's to think about? She's screwing around on you." I looked up from the engine I was working on. 23 years, Dwayne. Our daughter, the house, everything we built together. Everything you built. What she contributed besides a bigger mortgage and an attitude. He had a point. When we got married, Rachel was a junior architect making $30,000 a year. I was the one who encouraged her to go back to school, get her master's degree. I worked overtime to pay for it, took care of Maddie when Rachel had to study late. And when she finally made partner at the firm, when the money started rolling in, suddenly I wasn't good enough anymore. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Mrs. Henderson, wanting to know if her Buick was ready. I told her it'd be done by 5, hung up, and tried to focus on work. But my mind kept drifting back to that email, to the casual way Eric had written about lying to me. Around noon, Maddie texted me. "Having lunch with Mom and Eric. He's buying us sushi at that expensive place downtown." I stared at that text for a long time. My wife was having lunch with her lover and my daughter, playing happy family while I sat in my shop with grease under my fingernails, wondering how long this had been going on. That's when I decided I wasn't going to confront Rachel. Not yet. I was going to investigate. The next few days, I became a detective. Not the kind you see in movies, kicking down doors and chasing bad guys. The kind who pays attention to details, who notices when his wife starts wearing new perfume and working late 3 nights in a row. I started small. Checked our credit card statements online, something I'd never bothered with before. Rachel handled all the finances, said she was better with numbers. Turns out, she was also better at hiding expensive dinners at restaurants I'd never heard of. Hotel charges in cities where she claimed to be visiting clients. A jewelry store purchase for $800. Jewelry I'd never seen her wear. Wednesday evening, she came home with her hair done differently and a story about how the salon had squeezed her in last minute. Thursday, she worked late again, claiming Eric needed help with a proposal. Friday, she announced she'd be spending Saturday with her sister Linda in Columbus. Girls' Day, she said, not meeting my eyes. You know how Linda gets when she's stressed about her divorce. I knew Linda had been divorced for 2 years. Saturday morning, I watched Rachel pack her overnight bag with clothes I'd never seen before. A black dress that still had tags on it. Lingerie that definitely wasn't for my benefit. She kissed my cheek at the door like she had 1,000 times before. But this time, it felt like betrayal. I'll be back tomorrow evening. Love you. Love you too, I lied. An hour after she left, I was in my truck, following the GPS coordinates I'd pulled from her phone the night before. Not Columbus. Chicago, just like Eric's email had said. The Marriott downtown was the kind of place Rachel and I used to joke about. Too fancy for regular people, the kind of place where they charged $15 for a hamburger. I sat in the parking garage for 20 minutes, trying to decide what to do. Part of me wanted to march up there and catch them in the act, make a scene, let everyone know what kind of woman my wife really was. But the smarter part of me, the part that had learned patience working on stubborn engines, told me to wait, to gather more evidence, to plan. So I went home and waited. Rachel came back Sunday night full of stories about Linda's new apartment and how they'd gone shopping and seen a movie. She even had bags from stores in Columbus, probably bought on her way home to maintain the lie. She was good at this. I had to give her that. If I hadn't seen that email, I might have believed her. Monday morning, I called in a favor from my buddy Pete, who worked at the phone company. Told him I was worried about unauthorized charges on our family plan, needed to see the call logs. Pete owed me for the time I'd fixed his transmission for free, so he didn't ask questions. The logs told a story, dozens of calls to Eric's personal number, usually late at night after I'd gone to bed, text messages at all hours. And here's the kicker, location data showing her phone at Eric's apartment complex multiple times over the past month, always during her supposed client meetings. I printed everything out, put it in a folder, and locked it in my safe at the shop. Evidence, insurance, ammunition. Tuesday, I decided to pay Eric a visit. His office was on the 15th floor of one of those glass towers downtown, the kind of building that screamed money and importance. I'd been there exactly once before, for the firm's Christmas party 2 years ago. Rachel had introduced me around as my husband, the mechanic, with just enough condescension in her voice to make it clear she thought she'd married beneath her. The receptionist was young, pretty, and looked at me like I was lost. I'm here to see Eric Dalton, I said. I'm Sam McAllister, Rachel's husband. Her face brightened with recognition. Oh, Mr. McAllister, Eric's mentioned you. He says you do amazing work on cars. He's in a meeting right now, but I can... That's okay, I interrupted. I'll wait. I sat in one of those uncomfortable modern chairs and watched the office through the glass walls. Eric was in the conference room with 3 other people, gesturing at architectural drawings spread across a table. He was younger than me by a couple years, tall and lean in the way that comes from expensive gym memberships rather than actual work. His hair was perfect, his suit was perfect, and when he laughed at something one of his colleagues said, his teeth were perfect too. Everything about him made me want to punch something. He saw me through the glass and his expression changed, just for a second, but I caught it. Surprise, maybe even guilt, before he rearranged his features into a friendly smile and held up one finger. 5 more minutes. Those 5 minutes stretched into 20, then 30. I knew what he was doing, making me wait, establishing dominance, showing me that his time was more valuable than mine. It was a power play, and it worked. By the time he finally came out of that conference room, I was angry enough to do something stupid. Sam, great to see you, buddy. What brings you downtown? He shook my hand with both of his, the kind of grip politicians use when they want to seem sincere. His palm was soft, no calluses, no scars from years of working with tools. Just thought I'd stop by, I said. Rachel's been working so much lately I barely see her anymore. Figured I'd see where all her time goes. Something flickered behind his eyes. She's dedicated, that's for sure. We've got several big projects in the works. The Morrison development, the new City Hall renovation, keeps us both pretty busy. I bet it does. All those late nights, weekend trips. Must be nice having such a committed partner. The word partner hung in the air between us, loaded with double meaning. Eric's smile never wavered, but I saw his jaw tighten slightly. Rachel's the best architect I've ever worked with, he said carefully. The firm's lucky to have her. So am I replied, watching his face. Lucky to have her, I mean. 23 years of marriage, and she still surprises me. We stared at each other for a moment. Two men who knew exactly what the other was thinking, but couldn't say it out loud. Not yet. "Well," Eric said finally, "I should get back to work. Always great to see you, Sam." "You too, Eric. I'm sure I'll be seeing more of you soon." I left him standing there in his perfect office, probably wondering how much I knew. The truth was, I knew enough. More than enough. Now I just had to decide what to do about it. I didn't have to wait long to find out how far the betrayal went. Thursday evening, I was working late at the shop when Maddie called, crying. "Dad, you need to come home, now." "What's wrong? Are you hurt?" "Just come home, please." I found her in the living room, still in her school clothes, tears streaming down her face. Rachel was nowhere to be seen. "Maddie, what happened?" She held up her phone, showing me a text message thread. I was using Mom's iPad to work on my history project, and these messages popped up. From Eric. My hands shook as I read them. They weren't just about hotel rooms and secret meetings. They were about me, about how Rachel couldn't wait to get rid of the dead weight and start her real life, about how Eric had connections who could help her get a better settlement in the divorce, about how they'd been planning this for months. "She's going to leave us, isn't she?" Maddie whispered. I sat down next to my daughter and pulled her close. "I don't know, sweetheart. But whatever happens, you and I are going to be okay." "I heard her on the phone yesterday," Maddie continued. "She was talking to someone about the house, about how much it was worth. And she said something about your shop, about how it wasn't making enough money to matter." The shop that had supported our family for over 20 years didn't matter. The house I'd worked overtime to pay for was just another asset to be divided. And I was dead weight. That's when I stopped feeling hurt and started feeling angry. Rachel came home an hour later, full of apologies about working late and promises to make it up to us with takeout from our favorite Chinese place. She hugged Maddie like nothing had changed, asked about her day, played the loving mother perfectly. I waited until Maddie went upstairs to do homework before I made my move. "We need to talk," I said. Rachel looked up from her phone, probably texting Eric. "About what?" I pulled out my folder of evidence and set it on the coffee table between us. Phone records, credit card statements, hotel receipts, screenshots of the text messages Maddie had found. 23 years of marriage, reduced to a pile of papers that proved my wife was a liar and a cheat. Rachel's face went white, then red, then settled into something cold and calculating. "You've been spying on me." "I've been trying to figure out why my wife has been lying to me for months." "It's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think. You're having an affair with Eric, you're planning to divorce me, and you've been using our daughter as cover for your secret meetings." She stood up, pacing to the window, her back to me. When she turned around, the mask was completely off. This wasn't the woman I'd married, the woman who'd cried when I proposed, who'd held my hand during Maddie's birth. This was a stranger. "You want to know the truth, Sam? Fine. Yes, I'm having an affair. Yes, I'm planning to leave you. And yes, I've been planning it for months because I couldn't stand the thought of spending one more year pretending to be happy with this life." The words hit me like physical blows, but I kept my voice steady. "What about Maddie?" "Maddie will be fine. She'll live with me during the week, visit you on weekends, assuming you can afford a place decent enough for her to stay." "Assuming I can afford it?" Rachel smiled, and it was the cruelest thing I'd ever seen. "Eric's lawyer says that with your income versus mine, you'll be lucky to keep the shop. The house will have to be sold, of course. I'll need the equity for my new place." "New place?" "Eric and I are buying a house in Westwood. 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, pool in the backyard. Much more appropriate for someone in my position." I stared at her, this woman I'd loved for over 2 decades, and realized I was looking at a stranger. "When did you become this person?" "I became this person when I realized I was married to a man with no ambition, no drive, no future. You're 43 years old, Sam, and you're still working in the same garage, making the same money, dreaming the same small dreams. I want more than that. I built that shop from nothing. I put you through school. I supported your career. And I'm grateful for that. I really am. But gratitude isn't love, and pity isn't respect. I haven't been happy with you in years." The honest cruelty of it took my breath away. But it also clarified something for me. This wasn't about saving my marriage anymore. This was about protecting myself and my daughter from someone who saw us as obstacles to her happiness. "Fine," I said quietly. "You want a divorce? You'll get one. But it's not going to go the way you think it is." Rachel laughed. "Oh, Sam, you have no idea what you're up against. Eric's lawyer is the best in the city. I make 3 times what you make. I have connections, influence, resources you can't even imagine. You're going to get crushed." "Maybe, but I'm not going down without a fight." Fight all you want. You'll still lose everything. She was wrong about that. I wasn't going to lose everything. I was going to make sure she did. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 5 years and drove to see a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, Margaret Torres, the woman who'd handled my buddy Pete's divorce and taken his cheating ex-wife to the cleaners. Her office was in a strip mall between a tax preparation service and a bail bondsman, which told me she was probably more affordable than Eric's downtown shark. Margaret was in her 50s, gray-haired, and had the look of someone who'd seen every dirty trick in the book. She listened to my story without interruption, occasionally making notes on a yellow legal pad. "How long have you been married?" she asked when I finished. 23 years? Any prenuptial agreement? No. Good. That makes things simpler. Now, about these text messages your daughter found. Do you still have access to them? I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshots Maddie had taken. Margaret's eyebrows rose as she read. "Well, this is interesting. Your wife and her boyfriend discussing divorce strategy, asset division, and plans to minimize your settlement. This could be considered conspiracy to commit fraud." What does that mean? It means they're planning to screw you over, and they've left a paper trail proving it. In Ohio, adultery isn't grounds for divorce anymore, but it can affect asset division, especially when there's evidence of financial planning with the paramour. She leaned back in her chair, studying me. "I have to ask, what are you hoping to accomplish here? Are you trying to save your marriage, or do you want to make your wife pay for what she's done?" "My marriage is over. She made that clear last night, but I'm not going to let her destroy me and my daughter in the process." "Fair enough. Here's what we're going to do." Margaret's plan was elegant in its simplicity. First, we'd file for divorce immediately, before Rachel had a chance to hide assets or implement whatever strategy she and Eric had cooked up. Second, we'd request an emergency hearing to establish temporary custody and support arrangements. Third, we'd use Rachel's own words against her. The text messages proved she'd been planning to defraud me in the divorce settlement. "The key," Margaret explained, "is speed. Right now, she thinks she holds all the cards. She's going to be shocked when she gets served with papers, especially papers that quote her own text messages back at her." I left Margaret's office feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. But I wasn't done. Rachel thought she could humiliate me, take my daughter, destroy everything I'd built. She was about to learn that underestimating a man who'd spent his life solving problems was a big mistake. My next stop was the bank. Our joint checking account had about $8,000 in it, mostly from my shop's earnings. I withdrew $4,000, exactly half, and opened a new account at a different bank. Legal, but it would send a message. Then I went to see our insurance agent and removed Rachel from our auto policy. Her BMW was in her name, so she could get her own coverage. I also called our credit card companies and removed her as an authorized user on my accounts. If she wanted to buy Eric expensive dinners, she could do it with her own money. By the time I got home that evening, I'd laid the groundwork for war. Rachel was in the kitchen making dinner, acting like our conversation the night before had never happened. She smiled when I walked in, the same smile she'd been giving me for months while planning my destruction. "How was work?" she asked. "Enlightening." Maddie came downstairs then, and I could see the strain on her face. She'd been caught in the middle of this mess, and it wasn't fair to her. But I was going to make sure she didn't suffer for her mother's choices. We ate dinner in tense silence, Rachel making small talk about her day while I pushed food around my plate. Finally, Maddie couldn't take it anymore. "Are you guys getting divorced?" Rachel and I looked at each other across the table. For a moment, I saw something that might have been regret in her eyes. Then it was gone. "We're having some problems," Rachel said carefully. "But whatever happens, it doesn't change how much we both love you." "That's right," I agreed. "This is between your mother and me. You're the most important thing in both our lives." Maddie nodded, but I could see she didn't believe it. How could she? Her world was falling apart, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. All I could do was try to minimize the damage. After dinner, I went out to the garage to work on my truck. It didn't need work, but I needed the familiar comfort of tools in my hands, the simple logic of mechanical problems with mechanical solutions. I was replacing the air filter when Rachel appeared in the doorway. "We need to talk about how we're going to handle this," she said. "I thought we handled it last night." "I mean practically. Lawyers, paperwork, custody arrangements. We can do this civilly, Sam. We don't have to destroy each other." I looked up from my truck's engine. "You mean I don't have to fight back while you destroy me? I never wanted to hurt you." "But you're going to anyway," she sighed. "This doesn't have to be ugly. We can work something out that's fair to both of us." "Fair?" You've been planning this for months, Rachel. You and Eric have already decided how you're going to divide up my life. That's not fair. That's an ambush. How did you... She stopped herself, but it was too late. How did I what? Find out about Eric's lawyer? About your new house in Westwood? About your plan to take everything I've worked for? Her face hardened. You don't know what you're talking about. I know more than you think, and I know something else. You picked the wrong man to underestimate. I turned back to my truck, dismissing her. After a moment, I heard her footsteps retreating toward the house. Tomorrow she'd be served with divorce papers. Tomorrow she'd find out that her dead-weight husband wasn't going down without a fight. Tomorrow the real war would begin. The process server found Rachel at her office the next afternoon. I wasn't there to see her reaction, but Margaret called me with the details. Apparently Rachel had screamed at the poor guy, insisting there'd been some mistake, that she hadn't been served properly. Then she'd called Eric in a panic, and the two of them had spent an hour in his office with the door closed. She called me around 3, Margaret reported, demanded to know how we'd gotten access to her private communications. When I told her that her own daughter had provided the evidence, she got very quiet. What happens now? Now we wait. She'll hire a lawyer, probably the expensive one she and Eric had lined up. They'll try to claim the text messages were taken illegally, but since your daughter found them on a device in your home, that won't fly. They'll also try to paint you as vindictive and unstable, so be prepared for that. I was prepared. I'd been preparing for this my whole life without knowing it. Every time I'd fixed something that seemed unfixable, every time I'd solved a problem that stumped other mechanics, every time I'd refused to give up when things got tough. Rachel came home that night like a woman possessed. She stormed through the front door, threw her briefcase on the floor, and started screaming before I even had a chance to speak. How dare you drag our daughter into this? How dare you use her against me? I was sitting in my recliner, reading the newspaper like it was any other evening. I didn't look up. I didn't use her for anything. She found those messages herself. You put her up to it. You told her to spy on me. I didn't have to. She's 16, Rachel, not 6. She figured out what was happening on her own. Maddie appeared at the top of the stairs, drawn by her mother's shouting. Rachel saw her and lowered her voice, but the venom was still there. This is between your father and me, honey. Go back to your room. No, Maddie said quietly. I'm tired of pretending everything's normal when it's not. She came down the stairs and stood next to my chair, not taking sides exactly, but making it clear she wasn't going to be manipulated anymore. Maddie, you don't understand. I understand that you've been lying to us for months, Maddie interrupted. I understand that you're planning to leave Dad and take everything he's worked for. I understand that you think we're both stupid enough to believe your stories about working late and visiting Aunt Linda. Rachel's face crumpled. For a moment, she looked like the woman I'd married. Vulnerable, scared, human. Then the mask slipped back into place. Your father is trying to turn you against me. Dad hasn't said a word against you, Maddie replied. He didn't have to. I have eyes. I have ears. I know what's been going on. That's when Rachel made her biggest mistake. Instead of apologizing, instead of trying to explain or asking for forgiveness, she got angry. Fine. You want to know the truth? Your father is a loser. He's never going to be anything more than he is right now, a small-town mechanic with small-town dreams. I'm not going to waste the rest of my life pretending that's enough for me. The silence that followed was deafening. Maddie stared at her mother like she was looking at a stranger. And maybe she was. Get out, Maddie said quietly. What? I said get out. Go to Eric's house. Go to your new life. Just get out of here. Rachel looked at me, expecting support, expecting me to tell our daughter she couldn't talk to her mother that way. Instead, I folded my newspaper and stood up. You heard her. Get out. This is my house, too. Not anymore. Margaret filed an emergency motion this afternoon. As of tomorrow morning, you're not allowed back here without a court order? Rachel's face went white. You can't do that. I can, and I did. Your lawyer will explain it to you. She stood there for another moment, looking between me and Maddie, probably trying to figure out how everything had gone so wrong so fast. Then she grabbed her briefcase and headed for the door. This isn't over, she said. Yes, it is. She slammed the door hard enough to rattle the windows. Through the front window, I watched her get in her BMW and speed away, probably heading straight to Eric's place. Good. Let him deal with her rage. Maddie collapsed into the chair Rachel had vacated, suddenly looking very young. Are we going to be okay, Dad? I sat back down and reached over to take her hand. We're going to be better than okay. We're going to be free. The divorce took 6 months to finalize, but the outcome was never really in doubt. Rachel's own text messages sank her case before it started. The judge was not amused by her plans to defraud me in the settlement, and Eric's involvement made it even worse. In the end, I kept the house, the shop, and primary custody of Maddie. Rachel got to keep her BMW and her new life with Eric. The best part came 3 months after the divorce was final. I was working late at the shop when Dwayne came in with a newspaper and a huge grin. "You need to see this," he said, spreading the paper on my workbench. The headline read, "Local architecture firm under investigation for fraud." The article detailed how Eric's company had been overbilling clients for years, inflating costs and skimming the difference. The investigation had started when a disgruntled former employee, someone who'd been passed over for promotion when Eric made Rachel a partner, had gone to the authorities with evidence. Rachel's name was mentioned several times in the article. As Eric's business partner and romantic partner, she was facing criminal charges along with him. The house in Westwood had been seized as evidence. Their assets were frozen pending the investigation. "Think they'll go to prison?" Dwayne asked. "Probably. White-collar crime, first offense. They'll get a few years, maybe less with good behavior." "Couldn't happen to nicer people." I folded the newspaper and went back to work. I felt no satisfaction in Rachel's downfall, no joy in Eric's disgrace. They'd made their choices, and now they were living with the consequences, just like I was living with mine. The difference was, my consequences included a thriving business, a beautiful daughter who respected me, and the knowledge that I'd fought for what mattered and won. Their consequences included prison jumpsuits and the knowledge that their greed had destroyed everything they'd tried to steal. 6 months later, I got a letter from Rachel. She was in minimum security prison in southern Ohio, serving 18 months for fraud. The letter was full of apologies, regrets, and pleas for forgiveness. She wanted to see Maddie, wanted to rebuild their relationship, wanted a second chance. I showed the letter to Maddie, let her decide how to respond. She read it twice, then tore it up and threw it in the trash. "Some chances don't deserve to be second ones," she said. That night, I sat in my garage working on a classic Mustang that a customer had brought in for restoration. The radio was playing classic rock, my tools were spread out on the workbench, and through the open door I could see the lights in my house where my daughter was doing homework at the kitchen table. It wasn't the life I'd planned 24 years ago when I married Rachel. It was better. It was honest. It was mine. And in the end, that was worth more than all of Eric's money and Rachel's ambitions combined. I'd had the last laugh after all. The end, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.